What is up, friends? Today's an awesome day. Today we are doing the stereo, the head unit, in my 2016 Ford Focus ST. When I first got the car, one of my first videos, one of my biggest complaints was how bad the ST1 stereo sucks in this car. Not a lot of features, Bluetooth isn't awesome, so we're gonna change that today. I'm super excited about today because I've been waiting to do this for a while. I built a sub box, have an amp installed, and it's been waiting for a stereo to arrive, and it finally has. So let's get right into it. Since I am installing an amp, I am going to have to run another little wire power kit for it. It should be pretty simple, just from the battery across the engine bay, through the grommet on the passenger side, in behind the dash. Should be easy. I hope it's easy. We've already done it with big 2-aught cable, and that was a pain in the butt. So this should be much easier. This power pack does come with this bracket that you can mount to the back of a couple of Alpine stereos. I'm not doing an Alpine stereo, I'm doing the Sony. So we're not gonna use this bracket, so we're gonna toss it out to the side. We're just gonna use this power pack, wire harness that came with it, some zip ties, some screws for all the brackets and hardware we won't need. This is all we really need to get started. What's right here. First thing we have to do on this power pack is make sure that these little toggles are selected the correct way. So we're going to start here with the very first ones. You can see there's the option for speaker or RCA. We're going to be doing RCA, so I toggled that first one down. And we're doing 4-channel instead of 2-channel, so I've got that second one toggled up. And then now we've got the option for front high-pass filters and rear high-pass filters, which if we toggle them down here, we'll turn it off. If we leave them both up, it'll cross it over at 120 Hertz. And you can see there's 60 Hertz, 80 Hertz option. I do have a sub, so I am gonna toggle the high pass filter on for these things. And I'm gonna set it the same front and rear since I am going with some aftermarket speakers in my doors. But I'm gonna go ahead and toggle these to 60 Hertz. So I'm gonna make sure both switches, the one on the left is down, the one on the right is up. And I'm gonna do that right here. With these guys, you can follow the little thing. It shows you number 4 needs to be down, number 3 is up, and then I also need to do number 2 down and number 1 up. So now that is set to match the 60 Hertz on there. Second one same, and then I've got it set up for 4-channel RCA input. You'll also notice on the back here, this is rated at 50 watts RMS by 4 channels. The speakers I'm using are 45 watts RMS. So this is matched pretty well to the speakers that I'm going to be putting in my doors. Normally on this install, if you weren't installing an amp, you would take the Sony wire harness and take the speaker wires and connect them to this harness from the Metra kit. Since we're using the amplifier, I'm going to be instead taking the amplifier line out wires and connecting those speaker wires here, and then not using the speaker wires on that Sony harness at all. So I'm just going to take those speaker wires off that Sony deck. I'm just going to zip tie those together like that so they are out of the way. And I'm going to go ahead and take these wires and connect them to this harness right now. I'm going to trim these back quite a bit though, because there's a lot of wire there. Actually, what I'll probably do is zip tie it. I'll back it up on itself kind of like this, zip tie it, and then just splice it in. So that way I've got the extra wire if I need it. I had ordered some posi lock connectors. Those did not arrive. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use some heat shrink butt connectors to go ahead and connect this. You could solder and shrink wrap and stuff like that, but honestly, this works just as well. I've got the butt connectors attached to the amplifier, and now I'm just going to take the speaker wires from the Metra kit and match them up to the wires here, crimp them down, and then I'll use a little torch to heat shrink the ends down so it has a nice seal on there. And I'm just going to use like one of these little mini butane torches to heat these up and shrink down that shrink tube on each of those connections now. For the rest of the connections, you'll need to refer to your wiring guide as to what hooks up where. For the most part, they're color coded. You know, orange and white is illumination, red is your accessory wire, your blue and white's like a remote out. On this one here though, there's a reverse input. It's green and violet from the harness that attaches to the Metra kit, but on the Sony head unit, it's violet and white. So I had to look at the wire diagram to figure that out, and then the rest of it's just a matter now of just connecting all these wires together, yellow to yellow, another red here for an accessory turn on. And once all that's done, I'm going to use butt connectors, crimp it all down, and then shrink it all again, so that way it's got a nice seal. And I'm glad I double checked my wire guide there, because on my stereo, because of the car I have, the purple wires and the green wires will actually connect to the wires on my other harness. So I need to cut these now and splice it into this other harness here. Each stereo, each car is going to be different based on what options it has, whether there's factory stereos and things like that, or factory amplifiers, I should say. I've got all of my wire connections made now. The only one that's not finished off is the remote wire one, because I do have the remote wire for my sub amp that I need to connect to this. So I'll do that connection inside the vehicle, but everything else, all butt connected, ready to go. I'm gonna go ahead and kind of clean this up by folding the wires up on themselves and using some zip ties, so that way it looks a lot cleaner than just this big old jumbled mess right now. Now we've got the wire harness cleaned up a little bit. These are all the connections that will go back on the back of the Sony stereo. There's the steering wheel controls, RCA inputs for the amp, and then the actual plug for the head unit. These are the connections that go to the Alpine amp. These are the connections that go to the access box. And then these are the connections that get made inside the vehicle. So a lot cleaner, looks a little bit more organized. And we're ready to go over to the car and do some things. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to run the power kit for the amplifier. I'm not going to probably make a big video of that because I've already got a video showing how to do that, but I'm going to run the power wire from the battery through the firewall in behind the stereo, and then I've got a ground wire to ground somewhere inside the vehicle for the amplifier as well. Okay, now we're inside the car getting ready to pull out the factory cover, dash panel unit here, and we're going to be replacing it with that Sony. And then during this process, I am going to be doing the amplifier hookup. If you're just doing a deck replacement, your wiring would have been a little bit different. The only thing different I'm doing is taking the RCAs from the amp, hooking them to the back of the head unit, and then I wired the speakers from the amp to the harness. If you weren't using an amplifier, you would just not do that part of it. But if you're going to do this, get the amplifier. Like, it's worth it. It's going to make it sound way better. On the Focus ST1 package, the first thing we got to do is there's this airbag dash piece here that we need to just pry off using your trim tool here. There's like 4 little clips that will unclip and allow it to pop down. And then once we get it out, just like that, so you can see there's just these little clips that kind of hold it in place there. We're just popping those out. And then there's these little clips on the side that just kind of hold it in place. We're gonna get those out, and there's some on the back side you can't quite see back there. We're just gonna pry this out really quick and set it aside. One thing I will point out, back inside here, there are a couple of retaining clip things right back there, and you've got to use like a screwdriver or like your trim tool to kind of pry up on that to release it, so it lets it drop just like that. And you can see that's on both sides there, and you do have to pop those up to let it out of the dash there. And then now we're just gonna unclip the power wire right there, and like I said, just set this off to the side. Once the airbag light things out of the way, it's going to give you access to these 4 screws here. They're like a T25. We're going to go ahead and pop those out really quick. If you haven't done so already, go down below right there, hit that subscribe button for me. Appreciate it a ton. After you remove those screws, the next thing you do, open your glove box up, and you use your body trim panel tool to pry up right along this edge here on the trim piece, and then it allows you to just pop that right out. We'll just set it off to the side there, and now that's out. The next thing we're gonna do is use our pry tool and pry around this shift panel trim so we can lift this out as well. It's easiest to start prying here since this side's got the trim panel removed already, and then pop it out, and then just kind of continue popping it out all the way over that way till you get to those last couple clips. And then you can just pull that out and set that off to the side now. And that gives us access to another screw right here that we've got to take out. Once that screw's out, you got to pry up on the back. There's some clips on the back side here, right here, and then right here. And once you get those pried out, you can take this whole panel and pull it back. I've got a manual, so I can just slide it into wherever. If you've got an automatic, you'd probably have to put this down into the lowest gear to get this out. And now we can pull this forward and we'll be able to disconnect this if we need to, which I'm not sure if we actually need to disconnect it all the way. But if so, we'll just unplug the different plugs back here, set this off to the side. To make it easier, I probably will just do that. I've got the USB cable still hooked up. I'm not quite sure how that disconnects, to be honest. It might just snap in there, but I don't want to risk breaking it. So I just got that turned off to the side because now I've got access to this, and this thing here is just gonna have some clips that hold it in place. So we're just gonna pop it off. There should be a couple clips at the bottom here and probably a couple on the top, and this whole thing should just come right off, I believe. To remove this, it seems scary doing it because it's in there, and I literally just grabbed under it and pulled as hard as I could. Again, make sure you've got the 4 bolts out, the 4 Torx bolts out under the bottom, but then I just reached under it and pulled as hard as I could, and that's what actually popped this loose for me. So now you can see it's got a connection right here we'll have to disconnect, and we can now set this off to the side, as that is the cover, and then this will actually be the receiver we're going to pull out of here. See a couple Torx screws on there. We're going to pop those out, and it looks like the stereo will just slide forward at that point. I am mistaken. It looks like we'll have to remove these screws here off to the side as well, and this will come out as a big giant assembly, maybe, is what it looks like here. Once you've got all the screws out, then you can see this whole thing will slide out as one big assembly, and we'll just have to come on the back here, disconnect these wire harnesses so I can pull this all the way out. Once we've got it out, disconnected, we can just take this piece here. We're going to set this aside because we're not going to use that for the new install, but we will retain the screen. For this metric kit as well, you can see it doesn't have the vents attached, so we actually will be taking the vents off of here and then attaching them to this kit. You can see where they clip on right there. It's where they're clipped on right here. We're just going to move those clips back right there, there on both sides, pop that out and put it right in here, and the same thing for the vent adjuster on the top there. It just unclips and will slide into this one. I've got the one vent out, and I'll try to hold this and assemble it at the same time. So you can see, first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take that little guy right up there and slide it into this notch, just like it was in the factory. And then for these, we're just gonna line them up along the side here, and we're gonna just snap them into place. There's like little grooves they slide in, you can see, right? Little grooves on both sides, and we'll have to make sure those get set up so they're aligned, and then just snap it down into place, and there we go. Now we've got our vents on that one. Just got to do the other side really quick. Super simple, not hard at all. There those vents are, fully installed in that new kit that's going to go there. You can see that's where that little 4-inch screen goes, and then our new stereo will be right there down below. We also will need to remove the display from this factory bracket. So there's just a couple screws on the top right here that hold it in place, and then it should allow it to slide right off, I believe. I've got those screws removed, and it just allows that screen to pop out of that bracket, and then we can set that off to the side so we won't need that anymore. Earlier, we removed that airbag light piece, and now what we got to do is we got to pop this out of here, and we're going to install it in this little trim piece that comes with our new kit. So it's just a matter of popping it off and then popping it into there. There's like these little clips on the side of this airbag light that you'll just snap kind of into place on this. Is how that will attach and hold them on just like that. So now it's attached. On your newly assembled airbag light thing, there's these 2 little clips in here that come with this kit. You need to just put on these little prongs right here, one on each one. There you go. You can see they clip on just like that. You just got to push them on. They kind of snap into place on there. This kit comes with brackets to mount the stereo. They're labeled with a L and an R. So this side will be the right-hand side, and it'll just kind of sit right here, and there's some screws that'll mount to it, and then I've got a left-hand side one. Same thing right there, it'll screw to that. So we're gonna put those on there and attach those really quick. You know, to be honest, before we do that, it looks like we probably can go ahead and assemble these to the screen using the bolts and stuff that came with this kit, which are in this little packet, and that's how this screen attached to these brackets. So we're gonna do that part really quick here. There's these little clips on the bottom of that factory formed screen. Those actually have to get cut off, otherwise they'll hit your new head unit. So I'm gonna grab a little saw really quick and just cut those off. Something I struggled with far too long was the clip on the back of this unit here. So on here, there's this little clip. You push down on there's like a little thing you can depress right there and slide this down and the clip unplugs. It's that easy. Just so you know, I ran into that. I struggled with that, trying to figure that out for, you know, a few minutes. So I just wanted to point that out so you guys would know how that works. And there's kind of the little 4-inch screen assembled with those brackets, and now the stereo will actually mount to these brackets right here. What you want to do then is take your wire harness from this kit. There's 2 plugs that plug into the factory stereo right there, and then we'll have an antenna adapter that will plug into the plug right there that plugs into the stereo. I've got to make a connection for my remote wires still from the amplifier in the back, and then I can seal that one off, and then I can start assembling everything and get ready to put it all back together. For my install, I did have to order this little screw kit so I could attach my aftermarket stereo to this bracket. So you may need to order that, just something else to be aware of. And I'll link all of this stuff down in the description below in case anyone needs to make a purchase. Now it's simply a matter of just connecting all your wires, making sure your adapters are in. So there's my antenna adapter. I am plugged into the factory harnesses. I've got all my wires connected. This has the access port, which is plugged in. The only thing I have left to do, because I'm using the amplifier, is plug in my amplifier and then connect the RCAs to the back of the stereo. And then I've got the stereo plug here, as well as the steering wheel control plug, which will plug into the back of that stereo. So I'm going to go ahead and connect all that, and I'm about ready to turn this on and make sure the steering wheel controls work, because there's a way to program them if it doesn't auto detect, and you want to do that before you buckle everything back up, because you may need access to the button right in there. Another issue I've run into is this only has one subwoofer RCA, not necessarily uncommon, but I don't have a Y adapter to connect my subwoofer cables. I've got a couple options here. I can order the Y adapter, wait for it to come in, connect it here, and plug these into it, or I can choose one of these to connect to this, and then when the Y adapter arrives, go to the back, connect the Y adapter to the other end of here, and then plug the Y adapter into the amplifier. It's not going to matter which way I do that. The easiest way is going to be for me to plug this one in here. Remember, I'm using the blue one, and when I get the Y adapter, I'll go to the back, plug the Y adapter into the blue RCA at the rear of the vehicle, and then just plug that into the amp. So that's what I'm going to do for now, just because I don't have the Y adapter. This is also a good time to make sure that you use a USB cord and run it to wherever you want to connect it. In this vehicle, this should retain my factory USB, but it won't work for Android Auto. I've got to use this guy for the Android Auto, so I am going to connect a USB cable to this, a short one that's for my phone, not an aftermarket one, not a cheap one. I'm going to use a good one, and then I will run that somewhere to connect my smartphone so I can use the Android Auto features. This head unit also comes with a second USB cable right here that can be used for music or a flash drive, things like that. In my case, I won't be connecting that one because I'm only going to use Android Auto because I'll stream all my music. For the Bluetooth mic, I am going to be mounting it on this little trim piece right here, so it just pops up, so I can run the cable up that way to behind the stereo, and then I'm going to use the adhesive that comes with it to mount the mic right on here. All right, so wires are connected, everything's plugged in. I've taken the unit now and mounted it in the dash with this new kit. Screw there, screw up there, top, bottom. The amp is tucked in back behind there because the stereo is sweet, and it's got like a little area underneath the back right there. You can see how that's open right there. That allows that amp to tuck up behind there perfectly. So now we're ready to go ahead and start putting this thing back together. I've run my USB cable for my Android Auto connection. I am going to probably have to drill a hole on the back of this guy here so I can run that cable out down through here, or I can bring it up somewhere through the trim here maybe if I don't want to drill a hole in that. But honestly, a hole up in the top here, out of the way, no one's ever going to see it, and then allows me to have my cable come through here, which I would prefer, so I am going to do that before I put this piece back in. But let's test this thing out. Let's turn it on, see what it looks like, see what it sounds like. Just using the factory speakers right now. I will be putting in those Rockford Fosgates. I'll make another video for that, so subscribe, notifications on, so you get notified when I do that one. And I'm just gonna turn the ignition on. I'm not gonna start the car, so you'll hear annoying dinging noises telling me that, hey dummy, your car isn't started, and all that jazz. So just bear with me here. There's the little 4-inch screen working the way it should. That's where my backup camera will be. I could hook one up to this if I want, but I figured I was gonna have that in here anyway. I'll just use that for my backup camera. Oh, there it is. Look at that, Android Auto on the screen, guys. Waze, navigation. Got my Apple Music playing there. We've got all my different options for different things I can do. Messages, settings on here somewhere so I can adjust this. My Discord, gotta get my notifications from my gaming community. But yeah, there it is. Pretty slick. I'm gonna go ahead really quick, drill that hole like I said, throw the dash kit on there. I'll be right back, show you that finished product, see what it looks like, and give you my initial thoughts on this. Like I said, I just drilled a hole here, and that allows me to run that USB cable out. So it's gonna come out of that center pocket and allow me to plug my phone in and kind of keep it down here in the little holder area, so that way I don't have to use a mount or something on the dash. You don't have to do this, it's just something I wanna do to make things a little bit easier. There's this shifter trim piece put into place. See that cable coming down right there. Clean that up a little bit there. We'll get that piece knocked out of there so that's cleaner. That's just for me drilling the hole. But then we'll reassemble all of this, and then there's, like I said, that USB cable comes and hangs out down here. Plenty of room so I can put that phone wherever I want. There, the dashes all reassembled, put back together. There's all my mess. But couple things I do notice. I will have to disassemble this again because this is going to drive me nuts. You can see that little silver tab kind of along there. I need to adjust the radio up just a smidge to cover that up, and there's like a tiniest little gap there. The same reason though, the same issue that's causing that little silver trim piece to show is what's causing that little gap. The radio needs to be moved up just a tad on the bracket in there. So it's just a matter of unbolting those the four or six screws or whatever, slide it up and tighten it down, and then reassemble it. I'm gonna put that RCA adapter, the Y adapter, on the back of this stereo anyway. I thought about it. So I've got to pull all this apart again on Tuesday and reassemble everything. So I'll do that at that time. Until then, I'm just gonna check it out and enjoy it for the time being. So there's the standard Sony screen. The stereo is pretty nice. It's got some settings. There's multiple USB ports on here. I said there's USB port 1, which is the Android Auto one. It's labeled. You really can't mess that up. USB port 2, which you can use a thumb drive with music on it. I'll never use it for that. I'll probably use it to charge a phone if anything. And then here's your settings where you can go in and do your normal settings for steering wheel controls, things like that. You can customize your steering wheel controls, can change your language, date, time, all that stuff. You got your sound options, extra bass, we'll never use that. Subwoofer, currently have it turned off because I don't have it hooked up. The crossover is kind of cool, little feature that gives you the option to turn the bass off at a certain point at your speakers. My amplifier has that already, so I'm not gonna use this. That's gonna stay off. And then the equalizer on here somewhere, I don't remember where. But it's all right, it's kind of basic, not a lot of channels and stuff like that. The driving sound, so when you slow down, brings the volume down, brings it up, whatever you need there. So pretty cool. Some neat little options there. Here's your wallpaper options. You can add wallpaper to this, which is a nice feature. One of the reasons I picked this over the Alpine I was looking at as well. Again, that Android Auto on there, really nice. The only thing I really don't like about this kit in this car in particular is where these buttons are along the bottom. If you are going to use these at all, it's kind of a pain in the butt to get to them because there's this little ledge here and they're there. So like the volume button, stuff like that, I won't use that. I'll just use my steering wheel controls to adjust all that. Instead of using that, just use those. But if I needed to get to the home screen by hitting the home button, it's kind of just an awkward little place is all. That'd be my only complaint with this. Other than that, I really am liking this. I don't know if these things do anything. My hazards work, so that's good. And maybe on the home screen, it would bring up... No, these buttons really don't do too much on the home screen. Perhaps if I've got the radio turned on... No, they don't really do anything right now. Definitely a huge upgrade over that stock ST1 stereo that was basically this screen and then just a bunch of buttons here. Bluetooth works better already. Android Auto didn't have that with that option. And the nice thing about this kit, you can put whatever deck you want here. You can spend as little or as much on a head unit as you want. You can spend a couple $100. You can spend a couple $1,000 depending on what you want to do. And it's still honestly cheaper than upgrading to the factory Sony system with Android Auto and stuff like that that's available for it. Well, thanks for checking out the video. Like I said, be sure to subscribe below if you haven't and watch for my next video where I'll be installing door speakers. That's going to be super awesome. And I'll leave links to all the stuff down below, the products I use, the tools I use, all that fun stuff. Let me know what you thought of the video below, and until next time. I have a complaint about this system. So I couldn't get my steering wheel controls to work, and I've followed the reset instructions multiple times, looked up the directions on this kit, everything, and nothing would work. What's crazy is they will work if someone calls me and I answer it through the Ford Sync system. So I can still answer it, it'll display the information on the screen here, and then I can use the steering wheel controls just like normal. I can adjust the volume, hang up, answer, mute, all that stuff. I cannot use those controls on the Sony deck though. So I called tech support and asked them about it, and I was told the only way to make it work is to hook up the sync cables that are on the back of this head unit here. Sync, satellite, whatever cables. The problem is this deck doesn't have the correct inputs to connect those. But when I did my research and ordered the stereo, it said it would retain steering wheel control functions, even though this head unit doesn't have those inputs. So now I've got really two options, I guess. One, be mad about it and just deal with it and not use my steering wheel controls. Or two, I've got to return the stereo and buy another one. I'm trying to decide how important those steering wheel controls are to me at this point. Maybe there'll be an update, because I really like the stereo. The stereo is awesome. I love the Sony. That's a great head unit. Android Auto works amazingly well. Sound is great. I love the display on it. Just not having steering wheel controls kind of sucks.